Life. Do we need to practice at life or do we need to live it? Hey, it's David. Welcome back to the channel. I'm a sniper turned meditator and now the director of Kailash Ashram. Out here we share traditional meditation and yoga to help you transcend your suffering and live more fully as a human. Well, the practices of meditation and yoga are often referred to in tradition as Sādhanā. In this video, taken from our weekly discourse and sharing, I've got the great pleasure to help share a little bit more around how the traditional understanding of what Sādhanā is a little bit different to practice. To help us share the love of meditation and yoga with more and more people, really helps if you hit that like button and consider subscribing if this content's useful for you.
Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Para Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So may our soul create us, may our soul give us that sustenance, may our soul be that which dissolves obstruction and limitation. May we be that embodiment of the soul. To that soul we bow down. For those that are new, that's what that mantra, the Guru Avan, is about. The topic for tonight's discussion is around Sādhanā. Now, some of you might have come across this term in a variety of different contexts. Often it's used interchangeably with practice. And so the last couple of days I've been really reflecting on what it's like to be given a forced break from my practice. I've been so sick that to get out of bed and do some yoga was just not going to happen. I've had to honor, acknowledge where the body was at. And so practice, what is this practice for? You know, practice typically gets used in that context of, well, we go to footy practice, and footy practice isn't the game, right? So you go to your practice and you do your drills, you break things down into subcomponents, you do your learning, you understand something, and then there's the kind of the belief that you will put that into practice in a game, in the arena, and that's what counts. The game doesn't matter how well you train; it's how well you play on the field. Certainly, that's in the sporting arena. I experienced this in the military context where training is our practice. That's where we rehearse, we learn skills, we practice drills, and obviously, given the nature of military operations, you don't kill each other in training. Like, that would be a bad training. I mean, people do unfortunately die in training accidents, but warfare, on the other hand, is battle. That's where the conflict really happened. And so my own experience with this was very much, I spent a lot of time training, and with the exception of a few people who had deployed to East Timor, which was a peacekeeping operation that Australia was involved in for many years, there weren't so many combat veterans in the army. So what happens is when the army goes through a period of withdrawn or not being engaged in battle, in direct conflict with an enemy, the moniker that it's often given is the peacetime army. And certain things creep in, a lack of realness around the situation. There's no olds and bolds left in the organisation who've actually gone and, say, fought in Vietnam. And so a lot of the work that we were doing was peacetime army oriented. You know, the tail starts wagging the dog. You end up overemphasizing administrative things, filling in forms and more forms and more forms. And, you know, the bureaucratic mess kind of engulfs much of your life. And the training itself doesn't lend itself to being real. Like, it's very conjured in a laboratory type condition. You know, people cook up an idea of, well, this is a very safe activity to run and certainly no one's going to die, so we'll do that. Even though we know on the battlefield it's going to be very different, we'll practice like this. And so as a consequence, you can become a bit of a peacetime army and not really have that direct experience of conflict and suffer for it. So what my experience showed was that as the deployments to Afghanistan really started ramping up in around 2005, 06, after those deployments, there were waves of soldiers returning back to Australia who had direct experience on the battlefield. And so the wisdom that they'd gained by being in conflict with the enemy began to be shared across the army. And so one of the best takeaways from being in a sustained conflict, not that there's many positive takeaways from being engaged in conflict, was the fact that real world experience on the battlefield began to inform our training across a whole heap of different domains. And one of the maybe unexpected ones, first aid training, suddenly got real. Instead of being very sort of by the numbers or mechanical or a little bit kind of poxy, if you want to put another word on it, people started investing in making the practice or the training that we were doing be very translatable to what would be required of us on the battlefield. And so this shifted the mindset of the organisation of the Defence Force, and as a consequence, the training really improved, and so did our performance out there in the battlefield. Now, it started deteriorating for a bunch of reasons. Combat fatigue, people being deployed way too many times, a lot of the mental health issues in certain soldiers not being addressed, and so there was a negative consequence to being engaged full time in that campaign, but there was certainly a big benefit in terms of the way that we found ourselves operating. Now, what the hell does this have to do with meditation and yoga? Well, in case you aren't aware, nearly every great spiritual classic from the Bible through the Bhagavad Gita is set against the backdrop of a war. And war is great because it's a very caricatured, extreme experience. The real war, the real jihad, the real holy war is actually inside the human heart. And so I don't share this military analogy to glorify conflict, but to speak to the certain aspects of yogic practice and meditative practice that occurs for us as a human being on planet Earth. So peacetime leads to practice or training not necessarily being real. Too much or exposure to real world then informs practice. And so, they play off each other. Many people when they first are given a meditation practice, there's that word, they're given that practice. Here you go, do this thing and see what happens. Now, if you've been out here, you'll remember hopefully that Rajni has shared with you that we don't do meditation, we actually sit for meditation. So we've got a little bit of a play on words quite deliberately. But practice is, it's a bit of a loaded word. I mean, for me, it conjures up not the real thing. It's training and maybe less than. The yogic terminology is a word called Sādhanā. And many people will just blindly translate Sādhanā with practice. Oh yeah, I do this Himalayan meditation. That means I do a meditation practice. It kind of works in a roundabout way. But sadhana, just like samarpan doesn't equal surrender, there's a lot in the word samarpan, right? From sama being equanimity to arpan being the thing that pierces. Well, so too in a word like sadhana, there is way more wisdom to be gleaned. So sadhana, when it's translated by scholarly-minded folk, people who are looking at the technical definitions, often give a broad definition of sadhana as a means to accomplishing something. Okay, so it's a method. It's something for you to do to achieve an outcome. And so meditation, you might be doing meditation to achieve balance of mind. So that sadhana is the means that you're going to use to attain emptiness in mind and then equanimity of spirit or something like that. But that's not all that's there. When we break things down a little bit further, what the beautiful part of Sanskrit, or the beautiful aspect of Sanskrit as a language has to offer, and why it's used in the yogic tradition, is because each of those sounds, Sādhanā, means something in its own right. And so they can start speaking together to give us a hint at how we need to conduct, or how we could conduct, this mysterious practice or activity. So Sa is the feminine. So that's Shakti, that's the feminine principle, that's energy, that's life. Da means to set or lay upon. And Na is Shiva, or knowledge or consciousness. Okay, so the feminine principle, Sa, laying upon Da, and what is it laying upon? Shiva, consciousness, or, Shiva. That is the masculine. And so Sādhanā suddenly takes on a completely different meaning. What I can then draw into that, what I hear inside of, it's a bringing together. It's a laying upon each other of the masculine and feminine. And we think to ourselves, not looking at anyone in particular, the two lovebirds up there, but when masculine and feminine lay upon each other, what then happens? That's unity, right? That's yoga. And that's also where life is born. So that's the most powerful act we can do as creatures on planet Earth. Nothing else. We've not created anything in the laboratory that can bring together life in that manner, as in as organic manner as that. So, well, what is the masculine and what is the feminine that is being brought together, say, in a yogic sadhana? Well, if you're engaged in a hatha yoga practice, it will be mind and bodily sensation mating, so that's feminine, all of those are feminine, mating with consciousness. And that gives you, so when they lay upon each other, da, you're engaged in that activity. If you're engaged in the samarpan dhyan, which is another sadhana, another method to get you where you're going, into samadhi, into bliss, into equanimity, what are you uniting with consciousness? Everything. This is why surrender. This is why we let go of endeavoring to try and mate anything. You just let it happen. And the hint in this is really in the feminine, the sa. We allow that feminine quality of receptivity to receive the entire universe into us. And then we arrive at a more balanced state than when we were highly strung and worrying about work or lunch or breakfast or whatever was what happened 20 years ago. Whatever the preoccupation is let go of in preference of the mating together of those two. But Sanskrit is way more awesome than just that, okay? My Hatha Yoga guru, Sundarath, gave me another definition once of sadhana, which blew my mind. And he said, sa is also knowledge, and dana, when da and na are linked together, dana means it's a gift. And so dana is the gift, often in some spiritual traditions, it's the donation that you would offer to a teacher for the teachings is dana. And so what he shared as one definition of sadhana is the eternal gift. Okay, and so this completely radically transforms our own relationship to what we thought about as a practice. You're not doing a practice. You're not going to footy practice on Tuesday night. You're receiving an eternal gift. And, what is the eternal gift that I received? For me, it was sit down and don't do anything, let go. And I'm like, wow, that was a real gift to receive that practice. And so, mine and Rajni's life has become about offering that gift, that dana, that donation to other people. Hey, you can let go. And so simply by investigating the origins of a word that is widely used in the yogic sphere, we can reveal hidden meaning that can inform our own practice. When we forget, what is this sadhana business? It's a coming together. And this is where I feel that some of the more scholarly definitions of, a method to accomplish something or to attain something, there isn't going to be peace if there is a sense of accomplishing or a sense of aspiration. But there will be a sense of peace if there is an allowance of those two lovers to come together, the masculine consciousness and feminine, all manifest form. And then they merge together and reveal themselves to be one side or two sides of the same coin, rather. So interesting, we can take this a little bit further. So many people, once they've received a sadhana and they're engaged, say you're doing your 30 minutes of meditation every day, or whenever you feel the call to sit, or you're doing some hatha yoga from time to time, one upon this yogic path then can consider themselves a sadak. And that ka at the end, a sadak, sadhana, sadak. It's the same word, but instead of na, this time we have ka. Now, ka as a sound, ka is the seed syllable for the heart chakra. Okay, ka also means air or wind. And so air is the element that lives at the heart. That's where your lungs are. You breathe into that. So, ka is in the hatha yogic system where sound lives over the body, is at the heart. Ka is also kamma, which is desire. Now, not all desire is bad. The desire for liberation or freedom, is a worthy desire that will not cause suffering. Ka also means love. Okay, so when we link that into the word sadak, then we are the feminine laying upon love. And so for one to be upon that path, to be a sadak, then means to be following ultimately that path of love, which is just the positive force of wishing well for oneself and then outwardly to others. And the gateway in that department is the fact that it's sa, Shakti, the feminine, our inner feminine quality that is that source of love to self and other. So, for many people who are depleted in that department or a little bit blocked up at the heart because of the difficulties of life, the resonance of becoming a sadak means that, yes, you are a sadak. You are somebody who is allowing you are doing a sadhana, masculine and feminine emerging. And what is it resulting in? You being a loving recipient of that gift. Practice. Tuesday night footy practice or Thursday cricket practice or whatever, chess practice, practicing the guitar and sadhana are very different things. And I hope you can see that now. The final thread that I'd like to weave together here is that practice and life. Is life the battlefield, and is our meditation that compartmentalized training regime that we're taking ourselves through? Well, interestingly, on the path of Samarpan Dhyan, where you are taking your soul to be your guru, guess what? Life is your sadhana. So all of your wakeful consciousness is your spiritual practice. This is why people either love this path or absolutely hate it. Because if you love it, it means that wow, there's nowhere left to hide. I can pretend to do 30 minutes of meditation and that's my practice. But the real challenge, the real spiritual practice is going to be found in those moment-to-moment encounters throughout the day. People who love to busy themselves in dark rooms and spending a large amount of time with their eyes closed, pulling themselves away from life, can think that they're somehow superior because they're doing more practice. This path of Samarpan Dhyan only asks that you do 30 minutes of the sitting down in darkness by yourself, and that you then awaken soul consciousness within and spend the rest of your life with that pesky little angel on your shoulder telling you where you are treading wrong. I'm certainly... it's taken a couple of years to get accustomed to that little part of me that follows me around. And certainly it has meant letting go of a lot of the preconceived ideas that I had around what the path of meditation and yoga was really about. In the past, I used to think more stretching, more meditating equals better David. And to some extent, yes. Minimum effective dose, if I do my 30 minutes and an hour or so of hatha yoga normally does a trick for me, I'm in a pretty good way. But the tests will keep coming. What is that practice for, though? Well, I hope we've dismantled the notion that it's practice as in footy practice. When we say that life is sadhana, we're not saying that life is practice. Practice for what? The next life? The life after? No. Life itself is that place where masculine and feminine merge. And if you are a being in which those principles are at rest and are at merge inside of you, we would say that you're a peaceful person, that you're in love. And, you're not in love with a thing, you just are in that vibration of love. And so the really beautiful, beneficial part of taking all of your life as sadhana means that you don't just feel good when you're doing some stretching, you feel good in those momentary choices to shift your awareness more deeply into that place of peace, especially given the nature of the world is often divided and trying to pull you into that dance. So when we actively embody this path of being a sadhak, we are an inherently loving being, and then we just gently share that wherever we are called to be. And for some of us, that might be into a position where we're doing some talking. For others, it might be in one-on-one consults, healing and working through specific issues with other human beings. For other people, it might just be that you're that little brighter spark in the office and you tend to lift people up around you. The principle is the same wherever you go, allowing masculine and feminine selves to be at rest. In the yogic parlance, we would say that you are then centered. You're in your center channel, and being around those people certainly inspires me. And I find when I get caught in my divisive self, and I'm either masculine or feminine, and I'm warring, they're kind of not really lovers anymore. They're more like they're fighting with each other. But simply going to a place where I'm going to get reminded of that message of unity. It might be a profound or a sacred text to you. It might be somebody who shares messages or videos or talks. I've listened to a lot of the great spiritual mentors from the last 100 years. Those teachings essentially center you back home. Obviously, I'm completely biased. I think the single best thing that you can do to bring about that state of synthesis or union between masculine and feminine is Samarpan Dhyan, Himalayan meditation. That's why we've made our life about it. That's why we share it. And that's why we're about to do it. So hopefully that's a nice preamble into the activity this evening.
Well, I trust that tonight's meditation was extra moody with our mood lights. If you would like to get cracking with your own sadhana, your own practice, make sure you check out the link in the description where we've got an invitation for you to join some of our meditation program, as well as out here in person on our retreats. If this video has been useful for you, be sure to whack that like button and gently press subscribe for more awesome, informative, transformative content. Right now, up next, I've got a playlist for you with a bunch of different topics all tied together with the traditional meditation and yoga. Jayat Meshwa.